Mormon missionaries and evil spirits. Background: you know the Mormon missionaries? The 18 to 22-year-old guys in white shirts, ties, and name tags that knock on your door and tell you about Jesus? Yeah, I was one of those guys when I was that age. I served my 2-year mission in Arizona. Please note, my faith is very peripheral to this story. It merely provides a background and a setting. I had a lot of great experiences, learned a lot, but there was one experience that still scares me when I think about it. I swear, this is all true. I couldn't make this story up. I've kept most of this to myself, cause I still get chills when I talk about it, but getting it out has proved somewhat therapeutic for me. That being said, I still refuse to watch horror movies that have anything to do with demons or paranormal activity or any of that stuff. So, one night, my companion and I, Mormon missionaries go in pairs for a lot of reasons, but safety is a big reason, get a phone call from an unknown number. It's a lady we've never met who says she lives nearby. She asked us if we're holy men, and we say yes. I mean, after all, we both dedicated 2 years of our lives to help people come to Jesus. She sounds really shaken up and distressed. We ask if everything is okay, if there's anything we can do to help, and she responds by saying she just needs us to come and cast a demon out of their house. Now, missionaries have very strict rules, again for safety purposes. We're supposed to be in our apartment by 9:30 p.m. Wise in hindsight, since this was in the sketchiest part of Phoenix, and we would very regularly hear drive-by shootings happen throughout the night. This call came in at 9:28 p.m., 2 minutes before we're supposed to be in, so we told her we come by first thing in the morning. I hardly slept. I had no idea how to even approach casting a demon out of a house. It's not like there was a handbook for casting a demon out, at least not one that I have read or had access to. After stressing out for a long time, I start to calm down. I think, hey, I'm an elder in my church who has done really nothing for the past year of my life except spread the gospel. I'll be fine. Plus, they'll probably just imagine it after a scary movie or something like that. Just in case though, I got up early and read every Bible story of Jesus or his disciples rebuking spirits. The time comes, and we ride our bikes over to their house, and they're waiting outside. The whole family had slept in the front yard all night. Before we go in, they tell us what had happened. The layout of the setting is important. They had a big garage in the backyard that they had converted into a guest house. Kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, etc. They had a large family, and some of the kids lived back there. For weeks, they'd been hearing noises in the back house. Doors would open, things would be moved. A few days before the incident, the young kids, aged 4 and 5, started refusing to go to the back house, saying there was a bad man in there, dressed in black, with red eyes. For whatever reason, this wasn't a red flag to the rest of the family. They continued hanging out and living in the back house. The night they called us, their teenage daughter and son, this son had some developmental and mental health issues, had been watching a horror movie in the back house. The son had fallen asleep, the TV and the lights shut off out of nowhere, and the daughter suddenly got chills. She looks over to her brother and sees this black, cloaked figure with red eyes place his hands on the sleeping brother's head. She ran out screaming. The parents run back to see what is going on, to find their teenage son on all fours, growling in the back house. The ceiling was covered in flies. The son sees them, screams, stands up, and as stiff as a board, falls backwards and doesn't hit the floor, just stops, 6 inches from the floor, flat on his back, hovering above the floor. Then, in a very primal, unnerving way, starts crawling towards them, growling. They can see in his eyes that it is definitely not him, and whatever is behind those eyes intends to hurt them. They get out, and as episode passes, he has no memory of any of this. As soon as they are out of there, the mom started frantically making calls to every church, priest, elder, or anything holy she can think of. We were the first to respond. After talking with us, they all take shelter in the front house. But then, they start hearing doors slam on their own in that house too. This is why they slept in the front yard. Now, after hearing this story, I'm within a gnat's eyelash of pooping myself. It was so scary, it sounded like it might be made up. But on the significant chance that it's not made up, I'm scared to death. We go into the front house with the family, kneel in a circle and bless the front house. As we entered, we all felt a little uneasy, but after our prayer it felt lighter. I don't know how else to describe it, it felt good. We then went back to the rear house, where this incident had occurred. The door to the rear house opens, and all I can feel is darkness. Everything in me was telling me that there was something in there and that it was evil. I could physically feel the darkness and despair in that place. This freaked me out. And then I saw the flies, hundreds, thousands of them, all dead, covering the floor. At this point, there was nothing left in me that could doubt the family story. My missionary companion and I go with the parents. The kids refuse to go in with us. We open up all the doors and windows and turn on all the lights. Despite this, it still feels dark. And I have a feeling of being watched. Not just the everyday feeling of being watched. It was a more malicious feeling of being watched, like I was being watched by someone who desperately wanted to hurt me. Nobody was inside the house besides us missionaries and the parents. We kneel down. My companion begins the prayer. He commands, in the name of Christ, whatever spirit is in the home to leave the home and stop bothering this family. As soon as he used the name of Christ, there is an ungodly bellowing, half scream, half growl. As this terrifying noise is going up, the cabinets in the kitchenette fly open and pots and pans start flying around the room, smashing into walls. I can hear plates and cups shattering. A dark voice bellows, "Never." I have my eyes closed. Since we are praying, I have a very firm and distinct feeling that I should not open my eyes. My companion had to repeat his command 3 times at the top of his lungs. Finally, with a final terrifying growl, the pots and pans all crash to the ground. The feelings of darkness and dread leave. We all wait until everything is quiet before we open our eyes or leave the house. There were only 2 or 3 dead flies remaining in the home after the evil presence had departed. The house was in shambles, though. Cabinet doors broken, dangling by one hinge. Broken glass and porcelain everywhere, chairs overturned, heavy scratches on the wood table. And despite the wreckage, the place felt lighter, happier. I kept in touch with the family for a while after that. They never had any more problems with evil spirits. Still, it was by far the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. That was years ago. But I seriously doubt I will ever be able to watch any sort of paranormal or demon horror movie ever in my life. That crap is too real. And I'd rather not mess with it. A haunted trailer named Mark in Picture Rocks, Arizona. You know those Mormon missionaries you see on the side of the road, riding bikes in dorky outfits that you flip off or yell "Hail Sane," all the while giving the Nazi salute? Yeah, I was one of those guys. And a really shitty one at that. I was in Tucson, Arizona, and all the crazy-ass small border towns all the way out to Deming, New Mexico, aka bumfuck nowhere. One of the areas I was assigned to was Picture Rocks, Arizona, northwest of Tucson, out in the desert. Good luck finding that place. I found out within the first week that the whole damn town was haunted as fuck, along with tons of crazy activity with the cartel. I got a good story about that, and outlaws being chased by the sheriff and bounty hunters. Our mission office and its famous stupidity tried to pull all of us in the cheapest housing as much as possible to save a few bucks at the expense of our sanity and safety. In Picture Rocks, our house was a single wide trailer built in the 70s and its name was Mark. No joke. There was a plaque screwed into the side of the trailer that said, Mark. I found out the hard way Mark was more alive than I thought. Crazy and weird shit would happen almost on a daily basis. In Mark the trailer, I would sit there and watch the doors inside the house slowly open to then suddenly become slammed shut like someone kicked it as hard as they can. We would sit in our beds trying to get to sleep, and we would hear heavy footsteps start at the opposite end and walk all the way into our room and stop between our beds. I'd turn on the lights in panic and nothing would be there. You always had the feeling of being watched anytime you were inside. Sometimes you could feel this awful feeling inside and know it was about to do something. At random times, I could smell sulfur and natural gas like many haunted houses experiences. I remember one time when I was staying up late by myself to just be away from the mentally retarded companion. I looked outside the window and saw a dark, shadowy figure standing at the end of the walkway, stalking our trailer. I got so creeped out, I shut all the blinds and made sure all the doors were locked. There was nothing much we could do since we were in the middle of nowhere in the desert. We could have gotten killed, and no one would know until a week later. Like I said, things would happen almost every day. We'd drive up at night and see a bright blue strobing light coming out of the bathroom window. The moment I stepped into the trailer, the light stopped flashing. I went into the bathroom with this awful feeling hanging in the air and could not find anything that could possibly make any light like that. Sometimes I'd wake up in the night or in the morning and find the front or back door hanging wide open. I'd always make sure the doors were locked with the ghetto chain locks, knob lock, and bolt before I went to bed too. It never really harmed us though, so we learned to just live with the ghost. The most it ever did was grab me in the middle of the night. I was laying there trying to get some sleep with my knee on the very edge of the bed. I suddenly felt this long bony hand slowly cover my kneecap and squeeze hard. It scared the living hell out of me, and I pulled away and turned on the light to again find no one there and my idiot companion asleep. I started investigating Mark the trailer with other missionaries who used to serve in Picture Rocks, and they told me their stories. Other guys would see this Native American lady peek into the windows at them, and she would disappear the moment they stepped outside to confront her. Another guy told me that they were trying to get some sleep when they heard the footsteps in the trailer. Both of them got up to close the door, but as they tried to close the door, it came charging down the hallway and slammed into the other side of the door while they were trying to shut it. Fighting to shut the door, they finally got it closed. The moment it closed, the resistance on the other side of the door stopped. My conclusion: someone got brutally murdered on that property, or even inside Mark the trailer. Probably that Native American lady. The whole town was messed up though. I saw a guy disappear right in front of us when we were driving late at night on a dirt road. Even cars would come and disappear. I drove once down a dirt road to make the long trip home from an appointment, and this car came charging through at full speed in an intersection in front of us. It skidded to a halt in a cloud of dust and blocked out path north where we needed to go. All the windows were blacked out, so we couldn't see inside it, and no one got out. It just sat there, idling. I took the turn east, giving me no other choice to go, and hauled ass down the road, expecting people to ambush us or something. We always had one rule, and it was never to go exploring at night, because bad things would always almost happen in that town. While I was a missionary in Los Angeles, California. This is a real experience that I had during missionary service in Los Angeles, California back in 2010. I feel like a lot of LDS missionaries have similar experiences, but I don't hear them often, mostly because the people I know don't really like to talk about them. I know this is a little long, but it was consecutive days that happened. Sorry about that. I have been a missionary living in LA for about 6 to 8 months at the time these experiences occurred, and to this day, I haven't been able to come up with logical explanations for what happened. So, to paint the picture a little bit better, I'll give you a little bit of context. As a missionary, you get called to serve in an area assigned to you by church leaders, and it can be anywhere in the world. My particular calling was in LA, and I was to work mainly in the Spanish-speaking communities. You live and work with a partner or your companion, and you serve and visit families and individuals in your assigned area. During this time, I was assigned to the area which is just west of downtown LA, near Koreatown. While you are a missionary, you live in housing paid for by the church. so you don't get to choose your apartment or the area you live in. At the time, my companion and I were a little one-bedroom apartment in a small complex. We had just moved out of our old apartment and into this new complex. As missionaries, you don't really spend too much time in your apartment since you're out at appointments with people that you are teaching and visiting for pretty much the whole day up until 9 or 9:30 at night. Our apartment was tucked into a corner with another apartment, and the neighboring family always had their door open. I noticed as we were moving stuff in, they had a lot, and I mean a lot, of porcelain statues of the Virgin Mary. Some had candles around them, and others were placed in makeshift altars. After spending a lot of time with many different Hispanic families from all over Central and South America, this was something that I was accustomed to seeing. It's very common in the Hispanic culture, and many believe that these figurines and altars will help make their house more holy and keep out any bad spirits. Although thinking back on it, they had way more than any other house that I visited, and that was just what was able to be seen in the living room when the front door was open. The first night we slept in the apartment, things seemed pretty normal. I don't really sleep well. Pretty sure I have a mild case of insomnia. Takes me a while to fall asleep, and when I do, I'm never asleep for very long. I always seem to wake up at around 2 or 3 in the morning, no matter how tired I am. This night was no different. I woke up, and I remember that I was pretty cold, but we had a window unit that we turned on before bed, so I attributed it to that. I like to sleep cold, so I can get a huge blanket and wrap up. The bedroom was a decent-sized bedroom. There were 2 twin beds, almost like a dorm room, and 2 small dressers. The beds were underneath a window that was higher up and almost half the length of the wall. They faced the closet, which was basically these 2 huge mirror slider doors that went from floor to ceiling and went the length of the wall. These closet doors were pretty sturdy and took a little bit of effort to open. The next day we got up, made breakfast, and headed out for the day. This day started the first string of weird coincidences that ultimately led to more. We began by visiting a young family that lived with their mom in an old apartment complex. This family consisted of a single mom, her son probably in his mid-20s, her daughter and her daughter's husband, and their baby daughter. We started chatting and engaging in normal small talk, and then randomly the son said, "Hey, did I ever show you guys that picture on my phone that I found?" We told him no, and then he proceeded to tell us this story about a picture he had taken of his baby niece in her high chair in the kitchen. He told us he was just scrolling through his pictures on his phone a couple days earlier when he came across the picture of his niece and noticed something in the corner of the picture that he hadn't seen when he took the photo. He said he had been feeling uneasy in the house and that he kept hearing weird things but never really knew for sure what was going on, so he never really thought much about it. When he was looking at the picture, he noticed that there was a figure of a girl standing in the corner of the kitchen and said it was a ghost that he thinks had been haunting the whole family for the past couple of months. I was pretty skeptical and asked if he still had the picture, and he eagerly pulled it up and handed me the phone. This was the first time in my life that I'd ever seen a picture like this. She was standing there, behind the niece in the high chair, just looking at the camera. She was young, maybe in her teens, with jet black hair to her shoulders. She had what looked like a satchel over her shoulder, and her eyes were just black, completely black. She was wearing a modest white dress with sleeves to her elbows, and her mouth was barely open as if she was about to speak. And she was completely transparent. It was weird. He told us stories of the things that's been happening in the house. There were only 2 bedrooms in the little apartment, so he shared a room with his sister and brother-in-law and their daughter. He recounted that at night, he would feel the room get cold, and he would wake up and feel a weight on his chest that made it hard to breathe. As soon as the weight was lifted, he would look around the room and nobody else would be awake, but he knew that someone was watching him. One night in particular, the brother-in-law woke up and felt that there was someone in the room with them. He sat up and saw a shadow leaning over the baby's crib And when he tried to get out of bed to go to the baby, he instantly became paralyzed and couldn't move to go get it. We got home around 9 o'clock that night. I woke up at 1:30 a.m. I was freezing cold. We didn't even turn our window unit on before bed that night because we had left our window open while we were gone. After about 5 minutes, I get the feeling that I wasn't the only one awake, and figured my companion had woken up and rolled over or something, since it was so cold in our room. I looked over to see that he was still asleep and hadn't moved. I rolled over again and closed my eyes. I started to doze off, then had weird dreams about that picture and the ghost girl. I remember I kept half waking up. I remember feeling like people were watching me sleep. The next day was pretty normal except for dinner. As a missionary, you usually try to eat dinner with people who are members of your congregation that you attend. That way, you spend time with the members and get to know them and serve them and their families. And sometimes they have friends or family that want to know more about our church that they can refer you to. Plus, it's always nice to get a home-cooked meal from someone else. This particular night, we were eating dinner with a single mom and her 3 young kids. She lived in a very, very small studio apartment, stuffed with 2 twin beds and a small kitchen table. She was originally from Guatemala, and when she moved to the States, she moved into this building to get her and our kids off the street. It was an ancient building. It was big, had like 6 floors, and was in constant need of maintenance. The elevators never worked, so you always had to take the stairs, and there were roaches everywhere. Half of the apartments were vacant, including the apartment directly next to hers, and also the one directly above hers. I remember we were getting ready to leave and head back home for the night when she closed the door, stepped outside of the apartment, and told us she needed our help. She then proceeded to ask us what we thought about ghosts. She started to talk about these noises she was hearing in the apartments next to and above her. She said that there was nobody living in those apartments, but recently, she had heard voices through her walls from the apartment next to hers that were asking for her kids by name. She went and knocked on the door, but obviously nobody answered since there was nobody living there. But she heard laughing and little footsteps like someone was running around in there. On another occasion, she said that she heard tapping on the ceiling. She thought it was nothing until the tapping became more like pounding and got louder and louder. She said she felt very afraid and told us, "Me senti muy mal," which means she felt bad, like a very negative and scary feeling. She hit the ceiling with her broom handle, but it just got louder and louder and went on for a couple minutes and then just stopped. You could see it in her face that she was terrified and worried, especially since whatever it was knew her kid's name. We spoke with her a little longer, then said a special prayer with her to bless her house and then left. I don't really remember much of that bike ride home. I just remember I was thinking about the previous 2 days and the weird stories these people were telling me. As we were getting ready for bed, I remember my companion closed the gigantic mirror closet doors when I was heading to the bathroom to brush my teeth. I was super tired. I think I fell asleep first that night, which was a rare occurrence. But without fail, 2 o'clock a.m. arrives, and my eyes open. I was so sleepy, which is different than when I usually wake up in the middle of the night. Most of the time, I wake up almost wide awake, so this time was like something woke me up. I was freezing again. I rolled over on my side facing the wall and tried to close my eyes to sleep again when I heard a faint squeaking noise. It went for a second, then stopped. Like whatever it was realized it was making noise, then waited for a minute to make sure it didn't wake anyone up, then kept going. It sounded like someone was wheeling something across the floor or opening a window. I rolled over slowly after the noise stopped, expecting to see my companion at his dresser grabbing something or coming in from the bathroom, but he was still sound asleep facing the other wall. I stared at him for a second, then rolled back over and stopped mid-roll as I noticed the closet door was open about a foot. I stared at the big mirror door for a good 15 seconds, trying to remember if he had closed the door before we went to bed, and I was sure that he did. I figured that maybe he had gotten up or opened it after I fell asleep, and I managed to close my eyes and get some more sleep. During breakfast the next morning, my companion came in the kitchen and asked me if I'd opened the closet door during the night. I told him no, and that I thought he was the one that opened it. He looked at me kind of weird, almost like he was trying to figure out if I was messing with him or not. I didn't really think much of it either, and for some reason didn't tell him anything about the weird noise I'd heard. We went and met up with another set of missionaries that were in a nearby area, because that day we were going on what we called splits. Splits are basically when you trade companions for 24 hours. You either stay in your area and work with a missionary from another area, or you go to the other missionary's area and work there with his companion, and then you switch back the following day. I was assigned to stay in our area and work with a missionary that I had worked with before, so I was pretty excited about it since we were buddies. Come dinner time, we met a lady from our congregation at her house for some homemade burritos and other food. We got there and she gave us our food, and then she told us about a friend she had that lived across town who was a widow. She told us that her friend was having a really hard time being in her house alone because there were spirits that were tormenting her. She told us that the woman lives in this big house by herself and hasn't slept in over a week because when she sleeps, these spirits try to attack her. She said that the woman has had things thrown at her, she's been scratched and had her hair pulled, and had all sorts of other stuff that's been going on, and that she couldn't afford to move or go somewhere else. We got back to the apartment and got ready for bed. I remember that the whole time that I was getting ready, I felt like there were other people in our apartment other than the two of us. I didn't tell my new companion anything about the stories from the previous 2 days, nor did I tell him about the noise I heard the night before and my other companion's questions about our closet doors. He didn't seem to notice anything weird about our apartment, or at least, he didn't say anything, and just hopped into bed. I remember that night, I personally made sure the closet doors were all the way shut. 2:45 a.m., I woke up and checked my alarm clock. Sometimes I wake up just to roll over, and I can fall back asleep pretty quickly if I'm lucky. I remember as I rolled over, I thought I saw that the closet door was open about a foot. I ended up falling back asleep. 3:30 a.m., I opened my eyes and stared at my alarm clock. I remember I was on my side facing the wall, and it was freezing cold again. I remember this time when I woke up, I was wide awake, not groggy, not that weird half-sleep thing where it's hard to open your eyes. I was completely awake and alert. I remember feeling immediately on edge, like someone was watching me, just waiting for me to move. I remember feeling the hair on my body stand on end, and that it was so silent. I sat there motionless for a good 10 minutes, waiting for the feeling to go away, but it didn't. It just kept getting more and more intense. I was still lying on my side, and then I started to feel what felt like really cold fingers slide under my comforter by my neck. They grabbed my blanket, and I could feel the knuckles of the fingers on my neck and shoulder as they started to pull my covers down off of my body. Slowly, my comforter was going from my neck to my shoulders, to my elbow, and then to my waist. Then one big tug, and they were thrown down past my knees and off the foot of the bed. I was frozen and had my eyes closed. I couldn't talk, and I couldn't yell to my companion for help. I sat there for what felt like forever, and just kept feeling this little gust of air across my body, almost like someone or something was breathing on me. Every now and then, it felt like it would lightly scratch me or lightly run its fingers along my arm. Eventually, it stopped, and I told myself that on the count of 3, I was going to turn over and look. I turned over and looked all around the room. Nothing. It was silent. My companion was sound asleep, facing the other wall, and his covers were totally fine. He looked untouched and clearly hadn't been awake since we went to bed. I did notice, however, that the closet door was about 3 feet opened. Not all the way open, but more than it was before. Without a doubt, whatever had been coming into my room at night was coming from there. The feeling that something was watching me never went away. I never told my original companion what had happened, and weird enough, once he came back, nothing happened again. I don't know why I never told him what happened, and I don't know if I ever will. Since I returned from my missionary service, I have had other experiences as well. if there are any other people that have had experiences while serving your mission. I love to hear about them. Also, is it normal to have like 3 days of people telling you about paranormal stuff or small incidences before something happens to you? Has this ever happened to anyone else? Anyone have any ideas on what was coming out of my closet for those few days? I've never really looked much into it, but I love to hear what people think.